Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We'd greatly appreciate it. I have Dianna Evans on the podcast with us. She's coming to us all the way from North Dakota. She's a military registered nurse. She's also a Just Strong ambassador, but most importantly, she's our current guest. Dianna, thank you so much for being on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you to make that change and adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle? What motivated you?
So my fitness story actually starts back a really long time ago when I was actually going through ROTC to join the Air Force. I wasn't really too much into fitness or anything at that point in time, and after failing a PT test and not being able to actually activate my scholarship, I kind of had some motivation to actually get out there and start getting fit and actually, working out more regularly instead of just, thinking that I could kind of just fake my way through it. So it actually kind of started when I was 19 years old. So I've been doing this for a while. I'm 36 now. So even though a couple of years, I've kind of slacked off a bit, off and on, but now recently I picked it up again. So and as a result, I kind of just like stuck with the fitness thing because once I went on active duty and everything, obviously that's a huge focus for active duty personnel is staying fit. So I just kind of kept it up. It became even more important once I actually changed careers a couple of years into the Air Force and actually went to nursing school and became a nurse because, for obvious reasons, if I'm going to be teaching my patients about healthy lifestyles and everything, I better walk the walk instead of just talking the talk. So that's kind of where it went. And so for over the last really 14 years of my career, I kind of started to switch more over into like a health focused mindset, especially, once I took up nursing. So that was kind of the big thing that really started to push me into more of the health and fitness lifestyle. So with the deployment a couple of years ago, I really started to get back into weight training, strengthening exercises, and I've been more consistent with it ever since. So that was about 3 years ago.
That's awesome. And I mean, again, you guys, she doesn't look a day over 25. So that's another benefit to working out is that it really just makes everything look great. But when you were getting started working out, I always love to make the statement, if you're to go into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, their diet, what they eat, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. There's so many little things that add up to the eventual package that people end up seeing. When you were getting started in the gym, was it ever hard for you to sort of realize what worked best for your body? Was it just a lot of a process of just trying things out and figuring things out? Because I always like to say, if you were to go up to someone and say like, hey, this body part looks really great. What do you do? What do you train for that? What works best for them? 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And even for me, it was a lot of trial and error. I mean, I'm pretty sure that first time I probably showed up in the weight room, people were probably looking at me like, what is this girl doing? Why is she here? So it is one of those things where trial and error, you kind of have to figure out what works best for your body because a lot of times with fitness, one size is not fits all. So, and that's everything from like diet to what type of exercises, because, some people build their body parts a lot easier than others. I mean, for me, my arms are a lot easier to get definition than my lower body. Whereas a lot of women will come back and tell me like, oh my God, I love your arms. But they have a lot of problems getting like the tone in their arms, where their legs, on the other hand, they have an easier time of getting that muscle definition. So it's definitely it's going to kind of be dependent on your genetics, your body type, and then also really how you're fueling your workouts as well. So, because some people undereat, some people overeat, some people kind of finally found that magic Goldilocks area of their diet where they've actually been able to get some pretty decent results with, while not packing on too much weight.
Yeah, it's so much trial and error where you're kind of like your own scientist where you're just, trying to concoct, what works the best workout wise, nutrition wise. And when you were also getting started, one of the big myths that I love to bust is that, it's gotten better with Instagram, I think the last 5 years, but there's still a lot of women that believe that if they just touch one weight, they're just going to hulk out, put on that 50 pounds of muscle, become like Dwayne The Rock Johnson or someone. And I always say to that, I sign me up if you found that out, because you would find the secret that a lot of people are looking for. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I bet you hear that all the time. What do you mainly respond to when you hear that?
I kind of laugh at it actually, because quite frankly, I actually wish I was She-Hulk out if I just so much as looked as a weight. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. Especially for women, it does tend to be a little bit more complicated. I mean, some women do put muscle mass on a lot easier than other women, but due to our hormonal makeup, we have a lot less testosterone going through our bodies. it's a lot harder for women to build muscle. I mean, I have to eat a lot of calories per day to actually pack on the muscle, which pretty soon here in a couple of weeks, I'll be going on a cut to try and lose a little bit of the body fat and everything. But it requires like a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and really just doing some, casual weightlifting. I mean, it's not really going to do too much to turn you into the She-Hulk. So it takes a lot of effort. I definitely, don't want women to be afraid to go into the weight room because, I mean, honestly, strength training is one of the best ways to actually get. A lot of women are just like, oh, I just want to look tone, and they think cardio, just endless cardio, is the best way to go into it. And honestly, strength training is really going to be your best way to change the shape of your body. I mean, cardio is great too. Don't get me wrong; it does have its place, but strength training is definitely going to be the best way to actually reshape your body.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's just all about, hitting those weights. And I always say to every person I hear that from is like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthier. And I mean, you kind of talked about it too. I mean, we both live in really cold climates. I mean, you're from North Dakota, so that's even a little bit worse than for me in Minnesota. But, I put on my 10 to 15 pounds, of winter weight because if you stay super lean during the winter, you're not going to have a fun time, especially when you walk outside. But how do you stay motivated also? I mean, being that it's really, really cold outside in North Dakota, I mean, it gets very, very windy. How do you stay motivated to still want to be able to go to the gym when basically your body's just telling you, hey, let's just relax, let's just lie down and just kind of hibernate as for the winter?
I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy. This is actually kind of one of my first experience with like real winter. I'm a Southern girl, and I just
Oh,
recently moved up here from much warmer climates:
yep.
Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, even Hawaii. So this is definitely a new frontier for me. It has been rough. I usually, especially during the week, I rarely see the sun because I go to work in the dark. Usually, I don't leave work until after it's dark. I do take vitamin D, and that's definitely a big thing, especially for not seeing too much sunlight these days. And then one of the things that does actually keep me motivated, because believe me, there's nothing more than what that I want to do after work is just go home and plant my butt on the couch. But because I'm hoping to do like my first fitness competition here in May. Kind of having like that goal in sight, like, this is my target date, and it really keeps me motivated to stay, to work hard, keep my eyes on the prize and not give up. And I think that's really the biggest thing for that kind of helps like a lot of people is actually setting like a kind of like a more specific goal. So, sign up for a race, sign up for a figure competition or even a bikini competition. Something along those lines is usually one of those things kind of helps people stay motivated. It kind of helps them stay a little bit more focused than kind of just like some sort of vague, like, I kind of want to, get more fit, but I'm not really sure like what to do. So sometimes kind of having like a target for yourself, like some sort of event, is definitely a good way to help yourself stay motivated.
And then also, how are you able to still maintain, that lifestyle, knowing that like in the military, you get transferred around a lot? Like you said, you've been going to a lot of different places. Has that been difficult for you once you get set in a new place to sort of get back in that old sort of routine?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. We tend to be creatures of habit. But one of the things that we always say, especially in the Air Force, is, and I know this is going to sound kind of like corny, but flexibility is the key to air power. And I mean, it's kind of, and basically it's the same concept in your day to day life. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just like between travels, deployments, just things that are going on. It's just, you have to try and stay flexible and just adapt to the environment as best you can. I mean, like I said, North Dakota is like a whole new frontier for me.
Yeah.
I have, when I came up here, I was like, what is all this white stuff on the ground? And why am I sliding along the pavement
Yep.
from all the ice? But it's just one of those things where you kind of learn to adapt to your environment and then you do your best to just, again, like keep focused on your goals and stay the course.
How's your experience been like learning to drive in the snow? Has that been a difficulty for you?
It's been interesting,
Yeah.
especially since, again, I'm pretty used
Yeah.
to driving in the South where the worst you get is just rainstorms and everything. So it hasn't been too bad.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a little bit more
Yeah.
cautious than I am, like, say, during the
Mhm.
summertime. But so far, knock on wood, it hasn't
Mhm.
been too bad.
Well, I was gonna say, luckily, this has been one of the most mild winters we've ever had. Well, especially I don't know for North Dakota, but in Minnesota, I mean, this is the first day I think that we're reaching single digits out of the year, and this is close to the record I think for the longest it's ever took. So yeah, it's been luckily it's not been one of those like a couple winters ago when we just had snow upon snow. But
I've been
when
told that this is a pretty mild winter for us, too.
yeah. So I mean, it was out of I was always say if you're gonna go to North Dakota, never go in the winter. But at least being that it's kind of this mild of a winter, that's at least a little positive thing to take out of it. But at what point when you were in the military, was it just because you started training that you realized, hey, I want to become a nurse then, or was it something else where you just figured that would be really cool?
Actually, kind of, yeah, because after I started getting more into fitness, especially when I was doing my officer training and everything, once I commissioned, it, we have like physical training leaders and that kind of thing. So I was actually tapped to do that duty. And kind of as I started to go on in my, especially those first couple of years of my career, just in addition to the fitness stuff, I usually got kind of tagged to do like some other like health type related stuff, like teaching, first aid and CPR skills and that kind of thing. So I kind of just like took that and ran with it a little bit, especially once I started to transition and I became a reservist a couple of years while I was getting my BSN, and then I came back on active duty afterwards. So it kind of like started early, like that course, like towards aiming towards like more health related stuff, kind of started early on in my career. And then it was kind of one of those things that actually inspired me to change my career course a little bit and actually go to nursing school and basically do what I do now.
That's awesome. And also, I mean, I love to ask all the nurses that we have on the show. I mean, being that you're healthy and fit, you live a very active lifestyle. How much of that motivation also comes from the fact that being a nurse too, you sometimes deal with people that, have been dealt a rough hand in life, or people that, stuff has happened to them where they can't enjoy as active of a lifestyle. Does that serve as motivation for you, just seeing those types of people and then just realizing how lucky you are to have your health and have the active lifestyle that you have?
Yes, I've definitely been inspired to maintain healthy habits. Just because, yeah, I mean, I've seen some really sad situations through being, especially while I was doing like inpatient
Yeah.
nursing, and just kind of seeing how a healthy lifestyle can definitely affect you, especially as you start to get older. I mean, even for me, I'm in my late 30s now, so I only know it's going to get tougher from here on out. So I definitely want to maintain my health as best as I can, and I definitely want to inspire my patients to do the same thing.
And what was your nutrition like when you first got started, and has that changed at all? Sort of what you eat? Have you tried, different diets, or did you find the thing that you wanted nutrition wise early on, or has it just been an adaptation for you?
Even with that, it's been a lot of trial and error. So pretty much now I'm on a if it fits my macros type diet. Although I do try to stay like mostly with clean whole foods. It kind of depends on like what my fitness goals are. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be eating a lot more carbs. Like for instance, when I was training for a half Ironman last year,
Right.
I was eating a lot more carbs then than I am now. With just trying to build muscle. So sometimes it's more changing your diet to accommodate what type of fitness goals that you're going towards. And then it's also a lot of trial and error and kind of figuring out what works for you as far as that goes. Another thing I try to focus on too is, especially since I have like a some chronic illness and stuff that I deal with as well. That diet can absolutely influence how I feel on that. So that's kind of another thing that influences my diet choices and how I eat day to day.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so important just to find that right thing that works for you. And I mean, it's great that you find it, because believe me, we've had some people on who have been doing this for decades, and they still, excuse me, they still are, trying to find, that right balance for them. So, I mean, finding that early on is really, really good. But also, being able to adapt, because that's what all weight training is about. Because let's face it, I mean, when you do get older, you're gonna have to train differently, and everyone, talks about all the mix ups that they then eventually have to do to still, get that feeling, get that rush when they go and work out. But being in the military, I mean, you are supposed to be in really, really good shape. Do you ever sort of see that as pressure to still maintain the lifestyle? Just because when you think about people who are in the military, you think about people that are really in good shape.
I mean, yeah, there's always a pressure to it because I mean, I kind of have to pass my PT
Yeah.
test in order to keep my job because I mean, there actually have been people that have been involuntarily separated just because they haven't been able to pass their fit tests. I mean, not so much for me because I guess because of like what I do and everything, I'm mostly like left alone, so people don't really, leadership doesn't really pressure me or
Yeah.
anything like that. But I do definitely try to, kind of like encourage people, especially if they need like more help and everything. Like when I'm taking my test, I try to encourage like the other people that are testing
Mhm.
with me to, to push hard, to do their best, because there is definitely, I mean, we're all aware of it in the military. I mean, there is a certain expectation, and especially if we're out and deployed, and there's always that chance that we might be dealing with uh, well, in the case of medical, like mass casualty
Mhm.
events and that kind of thing, there's always that you need to have like a certain amount of endurance to be able to handle those types of situations.
Yeah, and I mean, I always say, I would love if they actually did like PT for like your normal average Joe jobs. That would really help with the obesity crisis. If for every job they just had a PT test that you did year round. That's actually a pretty good idea. But I mean, at what point did you decide that you wanted to, compete? Because I know that you haven't done a competition yet, but you're trying to get ready for one. Was it just something
Right.
recently, or was it something that you always wanted to do, and then you finally just decided, like, hey, I actually have the time now that I can do it?
Yeah, I've actually been considering doing it for quite a few years.
Mhm.
It's just like, especially living in Florida, it was so easy to be outdoors year
Mhm.
round. That's why I kind of was doing triathlons at that point in
Mhm.
time. But I knew once I got an assignment up here to North Dakota, I was like, well, I don't think I'm going to be spending as much time outside just due to weather conditions.
Mhm.
So I decided to change my focus a little bit because I've actually been wanting to do one of these for quite a few years. It's just that it's definitely a different training modality that you have to do as opposed to the endurance cardio and everything that I've been doing for like triathlons, half marathons, and that type of thing. So it was a little bit easier for me to change my focus up here, especially since I don't get to spend as much time outdoors year round as I would in the South.
I mean, that's what I always say when it also comes to that weather. Is I always say, like, what else are you gonna do then? If you're gonna be inside all the day, you might as well go to a gym, or you might as well, if you have a gym at your house, you might as well work out. I mean, what else are you gonna do? There's nothing else to do, especially when it gets really, really cold. So, yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. But now I always love to ask these two questions because they're questions that, I mean, I hear all the time and that I always need to ask. But one of the things that I found out when I started, going to the gym and getting bigger and stronger, the one negative thing for me is that you're gonna get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still home with my parents for the next couple of months, but every time they come home with groceries, I mean, I got to lift basically the car into the driveway. Have you found that that's a similar experience where people just take one look at you and just see, obviously that you work out, that they just assume that you can do favors for them?
Sometimes,
Mhm.
sometimes people aren't always like aware of things until
Mhm.
they actually see me in civilian
Yeah.
clothes. But then, kind of like once they figure it out, for instance, actually, if I'm asking for help with moving a desk, everyone's just like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think I'm strong enough." I'm like, "Dude, I'm gonna help you. Come on, it'll be okay. I
Yeah.
promise. You're a dude. You got this." So. It does kind of depend. I mean, I can at least open my own pickle jars and
Mhm.
carry my own groceries in. But sometimes I don't mind it
Mhm.
if people ask me for assistance, especially depending on what's going on. I remember, for instance, one time I was at the gym and there was like a elderly lady that
Mhm.
was working out, and I think she kind of started to get a little stuck with the weight, and so she asked me to help her. So I kind of like helped her so that way she could get out of the machine without getting injured. So it has been times like that where I definitely want to provide assistance to people, especially so because I don't want any injuries.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to call like an ambulance or something. So yeah,
Absolutely.
there are times like that where I do definitely try to step in to assist, or if people need help, that I try to help them out.
Yeah, it got to a point where it was like every other weekend last summer, my friends would call me up and ask to help them move. So got to a point where I just said, as long as it's after my workout, not before, because I don't want to get too tired to not be able to work out. But
Right.
also, I mean, I'm 6'3", so it's a double edged sword. So if I didn't have any muscle at all, they'd just be like, oh, the tall guy can do it. Just because, they'd see me walking down. So, I always say it's sort of a double edged sword. But now, probably my favorite question to ask, and again, it's a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there listening. But when it comes to clothes for fit women, your clothing options can be limited. And I know that you only wear civilian clothes, not as much as the average person, but I always like to say, if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time that are almost impossible because you're expected to have, like a skinnier waist and big legs. So it's a really hard thing to do. But what are some ways when you're in civilian clothing that you sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
Or workout clothes all the time.
Yep.
I mean that's honestly what it is. My
Mhm.
laundry basket is half uniforms, half gym clothes for the most part. So even like for instance, the shirt I'm wearing now is like more athletic
Mhm.
clothing, spandex type stuff. I do have the same problem with the skinny jeans now, where I'm having problems with them fitting over my thighs. But then you pull it up to the waist, and the waist is too loose, so then they slide down. I think there are some brands that are made for more like muscular women and everything that I definitely want to investigate at some
Yeah.
point, especially as I continue to work on my fitness goals and everything. But yeah, it's definitely been a problem. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, I know everyone says leggings aren't pants, but you know what?
Well, if they if
I,
they work, they
they work
work.
just
Yeah.
fine for me.
Yeah, absolutely, and I always say anyone out there who has a brand or anyone who has an idea, go come up with it because we have so many guests that are they're just dying to get that right clothing options. But we talked about before how you said that like your arms are something that really took off for you that you don't have to train as much now. What body part of yours really lagged behind that really you needed to catch up in order to get into so that it's proportional? Was there a body part that you really needed to do that to?
Oh yeah, lower body is super tough for me.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I think I have the opposite problem of a lot of women where
Hmm.
they're like, "Oh yeah, I can build my lower body pretty easily, but my upper body won't budge." And for me, it's just like my arms. easy, no big deal. And then for my lower body, I have to work really hard with that. So I have to do like 2 or 3 leg days a week just to kind of, maintain on that one and grow. Whereas, for my arms and stuff, I can focus on each part once a week and it's fine.
Yeah, that's lucky. I mean, for me, it's my back is really, really just blessed, and then my legs being that tall. I mean, I'm gonna have a bad time anytime. So yeah, like I said, twice a week I gotta do legs as well. Where I mean, that's my least favorite day, but you got to get it done because I don't want to be a Johnny Bravo, with just a big upper body and then low leg and
Right.
just little tiny legs walking around. So yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. But I mean, also, being in the military, being a nurse, what exactly? So because we had a nurse here that does I forget what it's called, but when they deliver babies, I forget what that's called. And then we have other nurses that do stuff.
Labor and delivery
Yeah,
nurse.
labor and delivery nurse. Yeah. So yeah, that's what it was called. So yeah, what exactly do you do with the nursing aspect? Are you more like inpatient care, or what are your functions?
So my background, I'm a med surg nurse. So that's pretty. Yeah, you have a lot of things that you can do with being a med surg nurse because that's actually kind of like your basis for nursing. I mean, a lot of nurses after they do like med surg and everything, a lot of times they'll specialize into other areas, such as labor and delivery, critical care, those types of things. For right now, I just stuck with being a med surg nurse. I got my certification in the med surg nursing area. I did start off in inpatient. I did do OBGYN for a little while, which does kind of involve babies, not so much like the delivery part, but the managing pregnancies, and then of course like the women's health side of it. And for right now, I do outpatient nursing for a primary care clinic.
So do you only work with veterans, or do you work with family members of veterans too, or is that how it works for military nurses?
So it kind of, I mean, it's kind of like a widespread, honestly, and it kind of depends on like sometimes with the clinic and everything. Right now, I work with a primarily active duty population. When I was working inpatient and doing OBGYN, it was not only active duty, but it was also like their family members. So like the spouses, occasionally children. When we would have like some children that were admitted for inpatient care, since we actually didn't have like a separate pediatrics ward at that facility, and then also a lot of retirees as well,
Yeah.
because being Florida, a lot of people retire down in Florida, so
Yep.
we had a large retiree population. So I didn't see as much active duty on the inpatient side. But I do nowadays. I do see a lot of primarily active duty, especially since that's kind of what my clinic focuses on.
Yeah, half of the Midwestern population that's over, 65 years old goes to Florida at least during the winter, and I can't say that I blame them. But now we
All the
go.
snowbirds.
Oh yeah, well yeah, 100. I mean, there's so many, like, there are houses now that are wide open that like no one touches for the next at least couple of months until they start to come back. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely just, yeah, all the snowbirds, and then that's where all the cabins normally come in, where the people then go and live there. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big thing with a lot of elderly people. But now we go to our audience favorite, and my personal favorite part of the podcast, where I'm going to ask Dianna here about 12 or so questions that I ask all of our health and fitness guests, and we're going to see how our answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the show. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
My go-to workout song at the moment.
Mhm.
Um, Truthfully, I actually don't have a go-to workout song. I just kind of I have a playlist that I go to,
Do you have a
and
specific genre that you prefer?
I actually listen to a lot of instrumental music, which I know is kind of a odd choice for most people. But that's it's kind of I find it soothing and also energetic at the same time. Kind of relaxes me a bit, so that way I can actually get into a good mindset and a good focus on my workout.
Yeah, I mean, my most well-known instrumental, I mean, Cliffs of Dover, if you've ever heard that one, that's one that I listen to, a lot too. That's my one instrumental. But yeah, I got to get my 80s cheese metal or stuff like that on, just because it's so cheesy that it really inspires me. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with any celebrity, who would it be?
I like to work out with The Rock.
Yep. Get that answer all the time. That's why I even included. I was gonna say from now on, like, other than The Rock, if you could work out with anyone. But yeah, I know everyone chooses him. He is by far our most popular answer. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
Oh wow, I never even thought about that.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I like to train with I honestly don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we normally get like comedians and stuff like that, but I always say to that, like, you're never going to be able to get a workout in because they're just going to make you laugh so much. I mean, you'll get a great ab workout, but I mean, that's about it. I mean, me personally, I don't know, who I would train, but yeah, I'll have to figure that one out. But now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
One item that I always need to have in my fridge, protein shakes.
Oh, yep. What kind of protein shakes do you take?
Right now, one of my favorite ones are the iconic chocolate truffle ones.
Ooh.
They're actually like pre-made ones,
Oh,
so
wow.
they're nice to grab and go with. And the chocolate flavor is actually pretty nice, and it's kind of a smooth flavor. Almost tastes like chocolate milk to me.
Mhm.
So it's nice because it actually tastes good. So that way, I don't feel like gagging you because you know how some protein powders you
Oh,
want.
yeah.
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
one that tasted, just like I don't know, it tasted like birthday cake kinda to me, like vanilla birthday cake, and every time I ate, I felt like I was gonna throw up, but yeah, everyone always has those experiences, and yeah, I did finally find one too that tastes almost just like chocolate milk, so I mean, I even enjoy it's the one I actually even enjoy doing it, which is good because, yeah, you don't want it where you just have to say like, "Oh, I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna throw up for the next, like, 15 minutes after I drink this,"
right,
but
yeah.
yep,
So and
yep.
Bang energy drinks too. I keep a lot of those in the fridge.
Oh yeah, those are very, very good as well. Yeah, we've heard a lot about them, and I've gotten a couple myself, and they are to die for. So again, I highly recommend those. But now, what is one thing if you had the all knowing power? What was one thing that you would change about the health and fitness lifestyle if you had the opportunity to?
If there's one thing that I could actually change about the health and fitness lifestyle, is actually would probably be trying to get rid of some of the because there's so much misinformation out there. There's so many. I mean, even what we kind of touched on it a little bit too. Like for instance, if women look at weights, they'll
Mhm.
suddenly like Hulk out and that type of thing. There's a lot of misinformation out there. It's almost overwhelming for people to weed through. And then the other thing is too is that especially with like a lot of like the either like the fad diets or like all these programs and stuff like that. I think they try to force too many changes on people all at once. To where basically to where it almost like sets people up to failure because it's like, oh my gosh, I have to like cut out everything. Only eat like a lettuce leaf per day, and honestly, it sets people up for failure because it just becomes it's unsustainable. It's too hard for them to follow, and then they give up like a couple of weeks into it, and they can't make sustainable changes. So I think that's kind of like some of the biggest problems with like the health and fitness industry is that it tries to like encourage like a lot of bad things like diet teas and these fad crash diets and that kind of thing, and it doesn't set up people up for any like long-term success.
I always, I mean, that is my number one thing myself personally too, because like I always love to point out, shows like The Biggest Loser where they get, all these obese people, they get them to lose like 300 pounds or so, but they don't teach them ways on how to keep the weight off. That's one big problem where people just want, they just want clients that pay them money and they want to, help them
Hmm.
lose weight. And then as soon as the weight's done lost, they just cut them loose and they say, okay, I'm done with you. So then these people aren't taught really normally the ways to keep the weight off. So then you see all these contestants, especially on Biggest Loser, where they catch up with them, like 3 or 4 years later. And some of them have even put on more weight than they originally even weighed before they started going on the show because they're not taught the right ways on how to maintain that. So,
Yeah, and then it just becomes like a vicious cycle
mhm,
for them, and it's just like this vicious cycle of just crash dieting, giving up, gaining the weight back,
mhm,
and like no one. A lot of times they're just never taught of ways to make sustainable changes because a lot of times, I mean, it's even with like anything with like nursing and stuff, especially if you're trying to help people manage chronic disease processes. If you tell them to change everything like all at once, of course they're not gonna. They're gonna be like, man, that's like too overwhelming. This is too much.
mhm.
I can't have anything that I like anymore. Like, why even bother with it? So it's kind of like, helping people, make those like long-term sustainable changes in small steps, small achievable goals. Because, helping people actually achieve small goals can help set them up for bigger successes down the line. Because, it's like you're going to stay more consistent if you can actually, basically, if you can actually, achieve success as opposed to like, just consistent failure. And they're going to be like, well, why even bother? Like, this, I can't do this.
It's just about setting those little goals. Because I always like to say, with my generation, everyone wants the results now and they want it yesterday. Where they're not willing to wait and see, a couple of months down the line, because you're not going to see results overnight. I always like to compare it like between like an alcoholic and someone who's trying to lose weight. An alcoholic, if they go one day without drinking, that's already a huge amount of progress for
Hmm.
them. Whereas if you're working out for one day, you look in the mirror, you're not going to see really any change at all. So you're just going to say like, oh my God, this was like all for nothing. Where it's just more of a process where you just have to, stick to it. And once you see those results, though, I mean, it's very addictive in a positive way. And just honestly,
Yeah.
just
And I
keep.
try to remind people about that too. I was like, listen, you didn't get to where you were overnight, and then you're not going to reach your goal overnight either. I mean, it took time to get where you are now, so it's going to take time to get where you want to be. So I kind of, when people ask me questions about it, I do try to, kind of gently remind them about that. It's like, it's a process and it takes time and it takes consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. But now going back to our questionnaire, what is the last TV show that you binge watched?
the Orville.
The Orville. Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good stories about that. I haven't watched it myself, but that is one of our more popular answers for sure. But now, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
My favorite TV show of all time, Star Trek.
Ooh. We have a Trekkie on the show. We usually that's our first. Okay, so this is gonna be like the 180th, I think, podcast that I've done, and you're our first ever Trekkie that's been on the show. So
Really?
we have an achievement. Yeah, we've had a couple of Star Wars, but yeah, for Star Trek, yeah.
Well, I
So
like Star Wars too,
yeah,
but
yeah, well, yeah, but Star Trek the original series, is that the one?
well, pretty much all of them. I
Yeah.
actually grew up on the Next Generation. Yes, I
Oh,
am an
yep.
'80s kid, so I am kind of like old. But I grew up on the Next Generations, watching it with my parents, and then then I kind of transitioned to Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise as those came out. My dad introduced me to the original series because he actually grew up with the original series, so he introduced me to that. And then, of course, now Star Trek Discovery.
hmm And now, a question that's not on the questionnaire, but I wanted to add on. So, what inspired you to join the military? Was it just something that you always wanted to do when you were younger, or what was the process and you deciding to pursue that career?
I'm actually a military brat.
Oh, yep. That's
So,
one of the ones that we
I,
usually get. Yep.
yeah, both of my parents were actually in the Air Force, and
Oh,
that was
wow.
how they met. So I've kind of already always had that
Mhm.
influence in my life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's obviously a lot of the times we do get the military brats, and you get that lifestyle when you're young, and it's super easy. Do you find that that was easy though then to transfer when you got into the military as opposed to just a normal civilian who had no experience with what military life is like?
In a certain regard, yes. I did. I also did JROTC in high school, so that kind of started to give me like a little small introduction that I was able to carry with me when I actually went to AFROTC in college. And then, of course, once I made that transition to active duty, so there was always that influence there. So I guess it wasn't really anything that was like hugely new to me.
Mhm. Yeah, which I think is really really huge. But now, what is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
Guilty pleasure. Well, I guess like probably the most recent one would have been Aquaman.
Ooh, see, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard such great reviews about it, so I definitely got to go and see it. But my guilty pleasure movie, again, all of my guy friends, close your ears, you never heard this from me. But Princess Bride is my guilty pleasure movie, and I will
Oh,
admit,
that's a good one
yeah,
too.
I will admit that in private and on this podcast only. But yeah, I know all the words, not all the words, but whenever it's one of those movies where you're flipping through the channels and you see it's on, you stop whatever you're doing and you watch it, no matter what part it's at. I mean, I'll give an example. So I was writing my thesis paper in college, and then it came on, and I stopped writing my thesis paper for 2 hours, and if that isn't dedication, I don't know what is. So yeah, that's my Princess Bride. But again, I'll never admit that in person. Now all my guy friends know you can come back on and listen. But now for our last question in the questionnaire part, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
The best piece of advice that I would give to my 18-year-old self is to stop worrying so much about what others think of you
Mhm.
and get out there and do your own thing. I think I wasted too much time in my younger years just always worrying about, what others think of me, trying to please others, that type of thing. So that would be what I would go back and tell myself is, hey, stop worrying about what others are thinking of you. You get out there, you do your thing, and you rock it.
My answer 100% as well. And so you said that you're going to be getting ready for a show soon. When do you think that you'll start your prep, and when do you think you'll start that?
Actually, I'm supposed to not this next week, but the week after is probably when I'm going to start doing my cutting and everything. So, and that'll put me at about 14 weeks out.
Wow. So, how are you preparing yourself mentally? Because I always love to say, to every guest that we have on the show, just to get into shape, to get ready to go on a prep takes so much hard work and dedication. And then once you go on a prep, that is notching things up to a whole different level when it comes to, you got to get all your workouts done on time. You got to eat the right amount of food at the right times for a lot of people.
Hmm.
How have you been working on that mentally, just realizing that, it is going to be a huge challenge for you?
Yeah, I've definitely been reminding myself about that over
Yeah.
the past few weeks, and I also have been warning my coworkers too. Because I do tend to
Yep.
get rather angry if I haven't eaten. So I've issued all my warnings to all my coworkers, like, watch out, when you come into my office, because if I haven't eaten, it might be a little bad.
They
But
might as well they might as well like put a little tracker on you so they know where you're at in the building. So if you're walking close to them, they can just hide in the corner or something.
yeah, well, yeah, they might already do that anyway, but yeah. So it's just I've been just trying to kind of like joking with them about
Mhm.
that. It's just kind of get starting to help me like get into the mental preparation of it, because it's definitely going to be a lot more disciplined than because right now even though I do try to even though I like have a certain macros that I try to stick with and a certain like calorie budget that I stick with day to day, it's like a lot of times if you kind of fudge it a little bit, like one day it's not that big of a deal, but then once you actually go into contest prep, it's going to actually be like really strict, because I mean, in order to get like that stage look that you want for that, and it's just pretty much reminding myself of, keeping my eyes on the prize, keeping my eyes on that goal and everything, just to, remind myself like, hey, you can't, one piece of candy, yeah, that's actually going to matter right now. So
Yeah, I mean it's very very, it just shows all the hard work and dedication that goes into that. But I thought this would be interesting because we've never had someone who's just about to get ready for their first show. So I always love to bring up the point, because it's not talked about on Instagram really at all ever, is that there's so many people. I'll give an example. So I was at a New Year's Eve party and a friend came up to me and said, "Ryan, well, I mean, I love watching your podcast, but I was surprised. I thought that a lot of these bodybuilders and weightlifters, that they were able to, just look like that year round. That I didn't know that, they had these big fluctuations between show and post show." And we have so many stories of people who come on here who, aren't ready for the fact that when you walk on stage, that is not a sustainable look. I mean, you can
mm-mm,
sustain that for probably that day or maybe a day after that, but then eventually you
mm-hmm.
are going to have to put on weight. Now that you're getting ready for that, how do you think you'll sort of deal with that fact that, I mean, like you said, you're going to be working for 14 weeks, basically going through a living hell just to get ready to step on
Right.
stage, and you're going to be at a look, I mean, you're probably going to look the best that you've ever looked, I mean, body wise, but how are you going to deal with the fact that, deep down, you are going to have to put weight back on, and it's not a sustainable look? Do you think that that's something that you just need to prepare yourself mentally for, or is it something that you just say, when it happens, I'll deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you do need to mentally prepare for it because, and I think a lot, and I agree. A lot of people don't realize that when you see people kind of like at their tip top shape on the Instagram photos, a lot of people don't realize that that isn't a sustainable look because there's like a lot of cutting. A lot of them, I think, even like have to dehydrate that
Mhm.
week before too. So cut out like a lot of water and everything just to get that really like tight, like Saran wrap look almost of your skin. Kind of like suction to your muscle and everything like that. I know for me, it's definitely gonna. It's gonna be tough for me too because I've had to work through a lot of like body image issues like a lot of women and I don't think it doesn't matter like what size you are. I mean, a lot of women out there, where a lot of us are always working through like our self image issues and everything. Even if someone else looks at us and be like, you're like my goal.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like they don't understand how tough that can be. So I know for me, it's definitely going to be it's probably going to be more of a mental challenge than it is a physical challenge and everything, just with both with like the discipline and then also like, kind of like that self image aspect of it. But at the same time, I think it's also a good opportunity to learn from it. And then, just once I kind of start like, kind of like reversing back out of that cut and everything, basically using it to my advantage to, make more gains in my training.
Absolutely, and that's what I always tell all the people is it's like you need to put it's just like with money. You got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on some muscle. So, yeah, and it can be really difficult because I mean, I go through that too. I mean, I don't compete, but when it gets to the wintertime, like I said, got to put on those extra few pounds because otherwise winter is going to be just an absolute pain
Yeah,
for
and
you.
even for me, it's not even so much that number on the
Yeah.
scale. I mean, quite frankly, I wouldn't even use the scale if I didn't, have to do like my weigh-ins and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's just a number. I mean, it's
Mhm.
more about how my clothes fit. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be kind of hard, just seeing like those physical
Yeah.
changes, after you get past that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now you're also a Just Strong ambassador. First of all, what is Just Strong and how did you get in with that?
So Just Strong is a an athletic clothing brand for women. And it's kind of like along with the same messages of female empowerment, showing strength. Not being afraid to be strong, not being afraid to like take up space and everything. So I'd seen their clothing brand, I really liked it. So I applied to be an ambassador with them. And just basically and you kind of like again showing like the strength, the healthy lifestyle and that type of thing.
That's awesome. So I highly recommend everyone go and check that out. Now, lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, so I just want to give a shout out to my coworkers that I work with up here in my clinic and everything because they've definitely been very supportive and very encouraging of my goals and everything. I do definitely appreciate all of that. All the jokes and them tolerating my hangry moods when I haven't eaten and everything. So definitely want to give a shout out to all my fellow providers, nurses, and technicians and admin personnel. I
Ye-
really appreciate you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. So shout out to all those people. I mean, like I said, the military is just such a huge yeah, I mean, it's just I just show such huge appreciation. Or I just admire what they do. So shout out to the people that, and then also for the people that will have to work with her for the next 14 weeks when she gets
Yeah,
started on
sorry
this
guys.
cut. Yeah, sorry ahead of time. So we're apologizing ahead of time. But again, you guys go and give Dianna a follow. I'll leave a link to her Instagram down below. Just looking at some of her photos, you will be inspired. You know, get off the couch and stop eating all those Twinkies, and adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle. But again, Dianna, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.